2025 began how 2024 finished for the town as they fell to a 1-0 defeat at home to Norwich City on New Year's Day. Alongside me to look back on an afternoon which offered more than what had gone before, but still nothing to show for it at the end of it, is the Lutonian journalist James Cunliffe, and we've got town fan Dan Barratt-Davis with us this week as well. Gents, that's pretty much it, isn't it? It was better than what had gone before, but equally there's still nothing to show for it.
No, there's still a lot of work he's doing.
Get them credits rolled.
Yep, here's your intro.
For me, it's the people and the spirit of the people as well.
I love this town. I love this town. I love this town. You know what I love about this town is actually you. Everyone in it has got this massive soul.
We're Luton people, and that's what we care about.
Hello everyone, welcome along to another episode of the Luton Town Supporters Trust podcast, the award-winning, longest running Luton Town podcast, having scooped bronze in the Best Football League podcast category in the Football Content Awards. This season, the show is in association with Solid, providing opportunities, provisions and assistance so our academy can fulfil their potential. As I mentioned before the intro, we are looking back at Luton Town 0, Norwich City 1 on Wednesday afternoon, and I've got the Lutonian journalist James Cunliffe and town fan Dan Barratt-Davis alongside me to do that. Gents, first of all, Happy New Year. Obviously hasn't started how we would have wanted to in terms of football, but I hope you enjoyed the celebrations, and yeah, wish you all the best for 2025.
Likewise.
I was asleep.
You was, yeah. You messaged me about 10:30 on New Year's morning, like, what have I missed? I was like, how have you slept through all them fireworks? But maybe you didn't get any fireworks around you.
New Year's Eve is for amateur drinkers. That's what it is for. Not the season pros. We sit it out.
Is that right?
Facts.
Season
Facts.
pros.
Yeah, the people that queue at bars, you're what's wrong with society. That's not how it works. You stand at the bar, you look who's around you, and you acknowledge who came before you, and you work it out that way. Anyone queuing at the bar, not having it. And to pay to get into a pub, no thanks.
There you go.
Fair enough.
That's the official line of 2025. Happy New Year to all of you watching and listening to this podcast as well. We hope you have a very prosperous year, and, well, hope your year's better than what Luton Town's has started. That is for sure. We're going to look back at the game, gents, but let's do things a little bit differently here. Let's start at the end and work our way back to the beginning, because, Jimbo, you've said a few times on this podcast what your big fear were this season, and you experienced it on Wednesday afternoon at the end of the game. It's probably best that you two talk through the reaction after the game, because most of it happened in the main stand and the main enclosure. At the Kenilworth end, it was still, there were a few boos when people came around, particularly Rob, but there was also an awful lot of clapping in the Kenilworth end, and that's absolutely everyone's right. More of the clapping was when the more senior players come around, I have to stress. But Jimbo, that wasn't the case by the time they made their way to the main stand.
No, it was booze for Edwards all the way until he went up the tunnel. And then as soon as that had happened, fans in the main stand turned around and, were straight away demanding change from Sweet and the board up in the executive boxes. Various shouts of, get it sorted or get him out. And all the stuff that I was really quite fearful could happen at the beginning of the season, that anything could turn, and mainly the unity that we had last year and, for a couple of years, in fact, could go, because it's very hard to get that back. And, it feels like it has gone. And that's not to say that I'm not saying that people aren't allowed to voice their opinions or anything. I'm just, reporting what I saw. And then, a significant amount of people sort of hung around after the final whistle around the, executive box enclosure bit, also, giving their 2 pennies worth. And, that fans are angry. And, I've not seen that since the last day of John Steele. It got quite bad then, and that was 9 years ago. So it's not something that is unfamiliar, but it's something that hasn't happened for a very long time because it's been sort of on the up and up, really, apart from the Graham Jones season, and COVID really nullified any of those feelings. So
it was getting the way there, wasn't
it? Yeah, it was. It
certainly weren't as bad as what we've seen, but yeah, no, to see people arguing amongst themselves as well, because I saw, like, where I am in the enclosure, I see people clapping and then people having a go at those people for clapping, and I'm just like, well, nobody's right or wrong, because everyone has their right to voice their opinion and sort of say how they feel about stuff. I'll be honest, a few years ago, I'd have been booing them and having a go. I didn't clap either yesterday. I just sort of stood motionless, really, because I was just like, what can I do? You know, what can we do about it? You know, it is down to the powers that be to take the action that they feel is necessary, and that's what they're doing. But there's 11,000 people in the stadium that know that a change is needed, really, and what can you do? There's ways of going about it. You can either F and blind at the board and take out frustrations out on Edwards, or you can just, you know, clap the players off and just try and encourage them, because they're the ones that got to do the business on the pitch, and just hope for the best. I mean, hopefully this improves. I'd like to see an improvement on the field, obviously, as we all would, because nobody in that ground on Wednesday wants Luton to fail, apart from the people in the away end, and fuck them. But, you know, we all want the same result. We all want Luton to do well, and because we're not, you know, there's different opinions about what should be done to make it right. And, you know, but yeah, it got a bit ugly Wednesday. I've seen people fighting each other, like having real arguments with each other, and pushing and shoving going on. And we don't want to see it. We don't want to see it. We just want to try and get through the mess and try and get out of this mess and get some better results.
Yeah, we don't want to see it. You're right, but at the same time, like you say, it's understandable.
Of course it is.
Results aren't good enough. No one, to be fair, no one has said they are. There's still nothing that's changing the way that we might get results.
But that reaction yesterday, that can't be because of that performance against Norwich.
No, but it's because of the results.
They were the better side against Norwich, and it's an accumulation, isn't it? Because we've said all along, you've said a lot of the time, if you're okay with losing as long as you try. And so they played better. They had the better chances. They hit the crossbar. They had a penalty shout. You know, you've seen them give them, seen them not. Two chances added by saved, and then Woodrow clips a post at the end. So they had all the chances, and they were on top, and they were dominant in nearly all the metrics apart from the scoreline. And I think Norwich just shaded the possession. I'm not sure.
Just about.
Yeah. But all the other ones, Luton had it. So it can't be because of that one performance. Because if you take that one performance in isolation, people can be disappointed at the fact that you've lost a game that you didn't deserve to. But it was, I guess it's the accumulation. And this is the issue of the away form coming home to roost at Kenilworth Road, because you lose 9 games in a row. Obviously, people aren't happy, and that isn't good enough. And I think everybody can acknowledge that. I think even Rob Edwards acknowledged that. But then it puts the pressure on the home games. And so the reaction that we saw on Wednesday night was only the culmination of what was going to happen if the away form continued to be so bad. Because the home form was propping Luton up. And listen, the home form, the home performance against Norwich was okay. But then the result wasn't. And then you see the reaction that we got there, and it's a double-edged sword, because you go into that sort of level of anger and toxicity, and I didn't see people pushing and shoving each other, but I take it if you did.
I think it was isolated anyway.
Yeah. But then that's very hard to wrestle back, and you know we're 24 hours on, more than 24 hours on, recording this podcast from the game, and there's been no announcement that people. There's the elephant in the room is, this is what people keep saying to us, is that they want Edwards out. So that is what people are saying. That is what the comments are on here. That's what people are saying on social media. We're 24 plus hours on from that, and he's not gone, and obviously afterwards he said he's not stepping away. So we have to assume that he's staying and he's going to be the manager. So how do you get the reaction back from what happened on Wednesday to trying to support the team, at least to try and get them to go?
Yeah, I'm not
to get a result and get something that can help save the situation.
I get what you're saying in terms of there was no atmosphere, hence the supporting the team. It should be said that all of this was after the game. During the game, players didn't get any stick or anything like that. They got encouragement when we were on top, and we weren't on top for the whole game, but we were on top for lots of the game. And when we were on top, there was lots of encouragement. There was, come on to when we win a corner and things like that. There was lots of that. Was there a great atmosphere? No, because people know what they're seeing and they know what's coming. And the longer Luton didn't score in that game, we can't keep a clean sheet. This team cannot keep a clean sheet.
It's not 100% true because there were fans singing. I know it's self-deprecating and stuff.
This is after they've scored, though. This is after they've scored.
Nothing special we lose every week. When the Norwich fans were singing, "How shit must you be because we're winning away."
Absolutely, that happened at Swansea as well. How shit must you be? We're winning away, and and that's probably. I mean, that's just banter. Does it help anyone? No, but it's people's way of getting through the situation. But
the sting off of it.
Yeah, but during the game itself, the bit that matters, the bit that really matters, players got the encouragement when they gave the fans reason to encourage them. However, this is not a Wednesday thing. You're right. You're absolutely right. It's not a Wednesday thing. This goes back to Middlesbrough away, where Rob, to all intents and purposes, for everyone in that away end, waved goodbye to Luton Town Football Club. That is how every single fan I spoke to, and I spoke to plenty going out of that ground, reacted. They all said to me, that was him waving goodbye, wasn't it? And that's what we all thought. Your colleagues who did the interview with Rob all thought exactly the same, that he was saying goodbye to this football club. Not a word has been said other than the odd programme note here or there, clarifying or unclarifying the situation. So it's been allowed to fester within the fan base with no official clarification either way. You and I are clever enough and we've kind of informed enough to know that he's not going anywhere. We read enough between the lines, but there's still no official he's not going anywhere. There's just we're building for the future and all of this. There's no statements like we saw from that Hull City one that we're backing our manager, even though they looked stupid 3 days later when they sacked him. There's been no actual official clarification. We're just reading between the lines that every press conference now Rob is talking about January, that we're therefore going forward. So there's no communication, which is what the unity of 2 years ago was built on. Club and fans were one, fans and club were one. That's disappeared since we got relegated from the Premier League. No communication whatsoever. Very minimal communication, should I say. If you don't get a programme, and there are many people that in that ground that don't get a programme, you won't have seen David Wilkinson's programme notes yesterday where he talks about the long-term game. And the long-term game is fine. Listen, it is an admirable stance what they are taking with regards to Rob Edwards or whoever the manager is. It is an admirable stance that they're sticking by their man. But what is in front of everyone's eyes right now is worrying because the relegation zone is closing in. If teams on Saturday who play before us win, we go to QPR in the bottom three of the Championship. And people are getting worried because, let's be honest, and people are saying this to me, it's not necessarily just my view, people are saying this to me, if we end up in the bottom three, would you trust some of these players to have the heart and the fight to get you out of the bottom three? And not many people are saying that they would trust all of them that are on the pitch. There is an awful lot of work that needs to be done. First of all, starting with an acknowledgement that we're in shit street in terms of a relegation battle, because we are. And the fact it took so long for substitutions to come along on Wednesday would suggest to me there is absolutely no acknowledgement that we're in the strife that we're in. And then once the subs had happened, there still wasn't an injection of urgency. Throw-ins were still taking an awful long time to happen. They were still going back and we were still pissing about with it around the back and occasionally passing it forward. There was no... I know we had the Corley Woodrow shot that hit the post in injury time. That was it in terms of chances created when you're in a relegation battle, when you're 1-0 down. And these things, they all go together. I mean, Rob's substitutions in this last week have been worrying in the absolute extreme. I called out the lack of Eric Peters coming on after the Swansea game. Why on earth, when you're 1-0 down at home, having referenced for the last however many weeks, the home form's keeping us out of the bottom three. Why on earth are you not reacting the second that ball hits the back of the net? Why have we got to watch them make 5 changes before our 4 changes come on? And even then, they're like for like changes. Okay, Moses ended up playing further forward than what Rue Walters ended up playing. But ultimately, we finished the game of football yesterday, sliding towards the bottom 3, with the same 3 centre-halves that started the game still on the pitch. Science had long gone by this point. Why are you keeping 3 centre-backs on the pitch and keeping them back? Reference Sunday, Harry Darling ended up going forward eventually. A long ball went up to Harry Darling to head across for someone to head in. Was there a Luton centre-back? Yes, in the very last minute of injury time. They didn't even let Kaminsky go up for the corner. What's the problem with losing 2-0? If we think the goal difference is going to play a part, we've got our heads well and truly in the sand. The goal difference is gone. That's not being repaired. The only way we're staying up this season is by getting more points than 3 other teams. We don't need to worry about goal difference. And all of this mixed messaging and all of this lack of improvement and lack of change on the pitch has got people to this stage. And you asked, how can it change? Well, it can change by a change. Now, the change isn't going to happen in the dugout. So the people who are in control of this team, they have to change what they are putting out. Because all we hear from Rob, and you hear it, I mean, I don't even know how you put up with it at press conferences these days. Well, we've got to go away and work hard. Bollocks to working hard. You seem to have worked hard for the last 6 months. We're getting worse. Change is the only way forward from this. And that's all people want to see. Now, if you change and you get tonked 4-0, then you can go out in your next press conference and say, well, we've changed, we've tried to change, and that's not working either. But we are sleepwalking towards League One right now, and we are doing so in the exact same fashion. All that's changing is the occasional personnel. And funnily enough, when those personnel come in, Zach Nelson being one yesterday, Joe Johnson at Bristol City, they're improving the side. And then they're out again the next game. Okay, Joe was obviously suspended, but Pelly improved the side, straight out on the sideline. Marvellous, straight out on the sideline after one game. This is a side that ultimately, since in the eyes of everyone, he was ready to go at Middlesbrough, has taken 10 points from 10 games. 10 points from 10 games. Put the 5 games before it, you've got 14 points from 15 games in the Championship. And nothing has changed on the football pitch to try and rectify that. Nothing. That formation has not changed apart from at Norwich away when it's looked the best that it's looked at any stage. And that's what people are getting peed off with. And that's why the reaction was what it was yesterday. It wasn't because of how well Luton played yesterday. I think there'll be an acknowledgement that Luton did play well yesterday, or played better than what we've served up in the last 2 or 3 home games. And it just so happens that when Sunderland were down here, we played really, really well and lost. We lost yesterday, but people want to see a change now. Now, they're not going to see the change that you've quite rightly referenced that they want to see. So what is here needs to change. It needs to change because, as I explained in the last podcast, that formation has not worked for a year. It's not going to suddenly work tomorrow. It's not. It needs to change. Otherwise, like I say, we could go to QPR in the bottom 3 and I wouldn't back us right now to come out of it.
Well, not at QPR. We don't got a particularly good record at there, and they've picked up now, so that's a worry. But yeah, listen, the formation is something that we've talked about a lot of the time. It doesn't work for us, and that was evident there. And I take everyone's points. That's what I was hearing in front of me at the stadium, that the substitutions were taking too long. They took the tops off, they sat down, and they told them some things, instructions, and it took a while to come on. And then clearly, I mean, you don't have to take my word for it. When the substitution did happen, a section of the stadium sang "It's a miracle" because they were frustrated by that. You can't expect those players, or any players really, to come on and have the impact within 5 minutes. Although that has happened, it has happened. You can't rely on that. You've got to give them the most amount of time to try and get something. And Luton was still on top, so. Yeah, I take everyone's view on that front about the substitutions being late. With 5 minutes to go is not going to help anyone, I don't think. So, yeah, that's one thing that can change. The formation is another thing that can change. But the available evidence to us, it's come from Rob said he's not going. He wants to try and turn it around. We've not heard from the board. I'm sure everyone would like to. We haven't, but the available evidence is that he'll be the manager for QPR. So what can change are those things. And some players have come back. There's 2 players that will be back from suspension. And so extra bodies, that can potentially change. And obviously the transfer window, that's another thing that can change. They've already got 2 in with Lamine and Christ Makoso. And hopefully they can get more. We were hearing sort of 4 or 5, weren't we? Whether that's 4 or 5 on top of Lamine, who'd already come in the summer, or included him. I think people would be, if they could get that many in and they're ready to go, that's the other thing, isn't it? Not, well, he might be developmental, we have to send him off. They need people now. Then that's another thing that can change. But we have to wait and see on that, because as we record this, we're 2 days into the transfer window.
But that's where I referenced, Dan, the lack of, or seeming lack of acknowledgement that we're in a relegation battle. We've just signed a defender, and the first thing we're hearing is that he could go out on loan because he's not ready for the first team. Well, sign someone who's ready for the first team, because this first team is losing games of football. It's won 3 games and drawn 1 of the last 10, and 2 of those 3 need an injury time winner, and you'd be very hard pushed to suggest that we deserve to beat Derby. Yes, we deserve to beat Stoke, but we certainly didn't deserve to beat Hull, and we didn't deserve to beat Derby. We could easily have come away from these 10 games with 4 points.
Yeah, or none.
Or none, yeah. Absolutely.
But yeah,
because the Swansea home draw was never a draw in a month of Sundays either.
I mean, the other thing as well, yes, we've had a lot of injury problems as well, but we've known this for how long now? The injury problems started at the end of the last January window.
But every team has them.
Well, yeah, of course they do. I mean, you don't have 14 at once for 2 months of the season, granted, which is what we had at the tail end of last season. But we knew that could have been a possibility again, and we only bought a couple. Well, we bought 5 or 6, I think, in the summer window. But most of them are injured. I mean, no one had seen out of Baptiste for a long time. Walters has just had a long layoff. So I feel like we're having, I don't mean scraping people out of the scrap heap, because it's disrespectful to those players we've brought in. You know, there's nothing wrong with their, in terms of footballing ability. It's more availability that's the problem, because we seem to be buying players that are just injury prone. We've got, 7, 8 centre-backs at the club? 2 of them are fit. So there's your problem. You know, we've got too many players who are injury prone, too many players that come in for a couple of games and then they're out again for God knows how long. And
but two fit centre backs would be okay if they played 4 at the back, though, wouldn't they?
Well, yeah, it would be. But then if one of them goes, you've got nothing again, have you? So
also, I suppose on the injury front, I hear a lot of people saying, "What is going on with injuries? It's been a year now." But if you really think about it, it's happened before. Luton would have been arguably would have been at least at Wembley, maybe in the Premier League a year earlier, if not for injuries in Nathan Jones' season. We went up to Huddersfield, battered the hell out of them, didn't have any players to stick it in the onion bag, and then we had to cryogenically freeze Adebayo to try and get him ready for the second leg, and he couldn't. He had to walk around, and so the injuries aren't isolated to this current managerial setup.
But therein lies the problem that fans have, isn't it? Because that's 3 years and it's still happening. How have we not identified what the issue is in 3 years? And one of the issues is, as you just quite rightly said, they buy players with an injury-prone record. It's not. I've said it on podcasts before, and my understanding is that they signed Baptiste and Walsh to be available alongside each other as one, rather than alongside each other as 2. And it's unfortunate that every time Baptiste's injured, Walsh decides he wants to be suspended. But if you sign an injury-prone player and he's injured, that is not unlucky. I'm sorry, it's not. You're signing an injury-prone player and he's got injured. That's how it is. The Alfie injury absolutely is unlucky, and my God, is it crippling us because we haven't got anywhere near a replacement for him. The Rue Walters injury was unlucky. They're unlucky injuries. Of course they are. The Ted and Mengi one initially would have been unlucky, but then to let him play on for another 6 months for it to damage, that's not unlucky. You know that's coming. That's on you.
That should have been done in the summer.
You know, the marvellous knee problem is unlucky, but they're not all unlucky.
You could say the Rue Walters one is odd as well, because he's injured his foot and nobody's realised he's broken it for a while.
Absolutely. So you can't really be surprised that you get so many injuries if you can't detect a broken foot.
So they should at least have the targets lined up and getting someone on the blower and go, right, we want to buy this player. How much do you want for him?
Yeah,
and start being proactive with it. There's no use. I mean, yeah, all right, we'll give you the Lamine Fanny one that was done months ago, and he's just come in the building now, and probably won't see him for a while. I don't know.
He's going to be available.
Is he?
Yeah, he can play at QPR. You can't register people until the 1st of January, and of course the FA aren't going to work on New Year's Day. So his registration went in for yesterday, but he wasn't cleared until today. So had yesterday's game been today, he could have played. He could have played today.
Okay, but I would like to see him be a bit more proactive. And yeah, I mean, this Christ Masoko sounds great, but he's one for the future. And we need people to come in for the future. Of course we do. But we also need people now. And this is what's getting people's backs up, is because we're not signing players. Do you remember Nathan Jones always used to sign players that would improve what we've got? And he did that year on year, player on player. Every time he brought someone in, like Adebayo coming in to replace Collins, we soon forgot about him. We didn't think we could replace Andy Shinnie. And he's soon been forgotten about, But we're not seeing that. Like, I don't see a ready-made replacement for Luke Berry, someone who worked his socks off for the club for so long. I don't see anybody stepping in his shoes as such. Do you know what I mean? And there's the frustration, because we look light in midfield. We've got some brilliant midfielders in there, but we look light. And then we've got someone like Pelly, who I know divides opinion, who's just sat there not getting a game. And
we're light in midfield because we've got formation
injured, or people that like getting sent off too much.
Well, or we've got a formation that wants to play more defenders than it'll ever want to play midfielders. Yeah, you're right.
There's a terrible imbalance, and the Alfie Doughty one's the most frustrating one. I mean, we've got Amari'i Bell who can cover that side, but Bell's been missing for most of the season with his hamstring recurring injury, another one. But we've got no defenders, so he has to play centre half because he can't play left wing back because we haven't got any centre halves, unless he plays the 4. There's that one. But there should still be a ready-made left wing back for Doughty.
And just on that, that's another thing that's antagonising the fan base, and I hear this an awful lot. Rob's saying we've got to play square pegs in round holes. No, you haven't. You can change your formation. It's not set in stone. They're not glued to the pitch in that formation. If you haven't got the players to play round pegs in round holes, find the formation that does let you play round pegs in round holes, and then you wouldn't have the situation that we had at Swansea on Sunday, where Tahith Chong was marking Harry Darling, and he lost out at the header, and we ended up losing what would have been a perfectly credible point just because of a refusal to change a formation.
You've got to have a plan B. I'm never going to sit and tell a manager how to do his job properly, but you've got to have a plan. All good managers have a plan B. Plan A's not working, revert to plan B. If that's not working, think of something off the top of your head and take a risk.
Well, if you've not got a plan B, plan A must be bloody good, and plan A is not. The last 12 months have shown us that this plan A is not working to the levels that supporters think it should do. Ultimately, it's a results business. Rob keeps on quoting that it's a results business here, so he clearly understands it. 14 points since the Derby Day win. 14 points in 15 games since when we all thought we turned the corner. 14 points. Now, after the Middlesbrough game, we got those extended programme notes that said an awful lot without saying anything, but one of the paragraphs within it said there's been I can't remember the exact quote, but I'll paraphrase it. There's been a meeting of the minds as a way to find consistency, particularly in our away form. 5 away games later, still no point, and we're getting worse on our travels. So whatever this meeting of the minds was, has not worked. 10 points from 10 games since that Middlesbrough debacle.
That was before Doughty got injured, though, wasn't it?
No, Doughty didn't play at Middlesbrough, did he? Because Hashioka was getting rinsed by Doak down that side. So Doughty didn't play at Middlesbrough. Doughty must have got injured in the home game, if not the one immediately prior to it.
The point still stands that he is Luton's
of course he is.
Creator and the most in Championship, and most things went through him. And you're seeing that the two strikers aren't really getting any service because most things went through him. And then on the right-hand side, we've not had a regular player there that's got used to that role. We thought it might be Hashi, injured. Occasionally, Moses has played there. You had Chong playing there. He's also been playing on the other side. So no one on that other side to take over the mantle. So that aspect is a big part of it as well, because they aren't getting the chances in the box where they need them. There was a couple of chances against Norwich, like there was a break, wasn't there? The Adebayo's first chance. He's in the middle of Norwich's half. He hasn't got the pace to beat anyone there. That's not his game. So he gets a shot off, hits a target, but it's tame in comparison. What them players need to be is in the box for the balls to be coming in. And that was the main feature of the Premier League when Doughty was getting load of plaudits, and that was the sort of main weapon, main route to goals. That's not happened now since he's gone. So that's another factor as well. But they've got. I take your point. You've had enough time to try and work out how to change it.
You knew when he'd done his ankle ligaments that you weren't seeing him for 2-3 months. As it turns out, I'm led to believe we might see him on Monday. But so maybe right now it's a moot point. But you knew there and then. So you've had an international break in the meantime. It's still not worked out. Surely we've worked out that Chong ain't the answer, but he keeps on being put there.
Not sure why.
Change the formation. If you haven't got the person to go there, change the formation. No one's going to die. Just change the formation. It's not going to hurt us. And if it does, guess what? We're losing anyway.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's one of the things you can change. That's one of the things that's obvious that can change. And that is one of the things that pre-game, when the team sheet comes out, I have a quick scroll on social media. I'm not with the fans, obviously. You are. You could tell me the same thing, but in person, probably. It's just a stream of people going, surely we're not playing 5 at the back again now. Surely we're not.
Mm.
And then you see the players warm up and you see 3 centre-backs doing heading practice. You go, oh, we are again. And it doesn't change. I don't really know.
They win a lot of headers in them things, don't they? They do well.
I don't really know why you'd want to play that defensive at home anyway, for starters. I did ask Rob what the benefits were of the 3. I asked Tom Holmes as well, in fact, and the idea is that the outside 2 centre-backs can get involved in attacks more, but it's just that's not happening because the players that can do that are arguably Amari'i Bell and Reece Burke, and they ain't playing because they've been injured a lot.
And the culmination of it is the reaction at the end of the game on Wednesday, and people hear nothing, people see nothing, people get frustrated. Are they right to take it out on the board? No, because without the board, there's no football. Without this particular board, we're not supporting a football club. It's gone bust. But that doesn't mean to say that they're immune to everything in the same fashion. For all the plaudits that they should get for taking us to Power Court, doesn't mean to say that they're immune from criticism of what's going on the pitch right now and what is going on the pitch. And I keep on referencing this, Jimbo. It's a lot of money to watch this football team, and you're getting absolutely zero in terms of entertainment to show for it. Not necessarily yesterday. We'll come on to the game in a second. But in that overall 10-game package, how many times can you say Luton have played well? Stoke at home and yesterday. 2 times in 10. A lot of money to be entertained at a maximum 2 times in 10. Forget results, just entertainment 2 times in 10. Around Christmas time, crowds are still good. Nowhere near as many as they said there was yesterday, but crowds are still good. 770 went to Swansea on Sunday. Over 1,000 went to Bristol City. Going to be very interesting how many go to QPR on Monday night at 38 quid for a game that's on television. Usually that's sold out weeks in advance. I'll be amazed if it gets anywhere close to being sold out, given what we're going through away from home.
I think there was a lot of space.
But people, absolutely. They're not prepared to watch it anymore because more often than not, it's just dour, turgid championship fare.
And it doesn't make somebody any less of a fan either.
Of course not.
If they don't want to come, because you get, I know people who love that club as much as we do that don't want to go anymore because they're sick of seeing the same thing.
We're in a cost of living crisis.
Well, it's like looking out the window and knowing there's a thunderstorm coming and just hoping for a bit of sun when you know it's going to thunderstorm for the next 3 days. It's just it's not going to change. So why would you sit and look at it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Which I get it.
There's a lot of sacrifices being made for not very much return at the moment, and people have decided that they've had enough of it, and that is the end game.
Away on that point, people not going to away games is not really going to affect anything. from a Luton perspective, is it? Apart from the fact that you won't have as many voices, hopefully trying to cheer on the boys on an away ground that they're not particularly good at, and against a team that they've already lost to when they shouldn't have.
Not particularly good at, but we've been down there in the cup this season and drawn. We lost. We won 3-0 last time we were there in the league. I don't think it's a case of I'm not going because Luton never win there. I've never come across a Luton fans who've thought that. £38, and they're not going to get entertained, and they can. And it's. I've looked at the feel-like temperatures for Monday night, and it's in the minus. You can sit there with a beer in your hand, with your feet up on the couch, and not pay £38. And that's only £38 to walk into the turnstiles. Still got to get there. Still got to have some food and drink and stuff. So you're not getting much change out of 70, 75 quid. There's no guarantee you're going to see anything. I think we'll do this when we do the QPR preview. We'll do a full preview, but I'd be amazed if any of the three of us think we're going to go and win there right now. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll find out in the next podcast. But it's a lot of money. And this 9-game package, as I've said, if you go to Luton games on your own, you're well close to £1,000 for these 9 games, and you've had bobbins to show for it, apart from a 2-0 lead at Coventry and a couple of gifts at Norwich and Swansea.
Yeah, I feel your pain for shelling out that sort of amount money to go and watch it. It adds into the reaction that we saw, didn't it? I mean, not totally, because the away allocations are a lot less than the 11 and whatever thousand was supposedly in the ground here for the Norwich game, but they're not getting the performances at home, really. I've seen quite a few people say they're not really sure what the style of play is, what we're supposed to be doing. And that's another thing, I suppose, which, when things aren't changing, the team's formation stays the same, and they don't. I mean, it was nowhere near as bad as a couple of games back where they couldn't string 2 passes together. I forget who that was against. Was that against
Derby, wasn't it?
Derby, yeah, really. But it was really bad. They couldn't string 2 passes together. Yeah, when the rain came down and it cut up and stuff. Oh, it was Swansea, wasn't it? Swansea. Probably just the same in both games.
You can go right the way through the season, to be fair.
Yeah. So yeah, if you're seeing that, you're paying your money, and you're not getting anything, then you can well understand why that reaction happened. I'm just saying, as I'm standing there, I'm not reveling in that in the slightest. I'm just thinking, oh, no.
Not this again. No one wants it to be like that. No one wants to stand there and have those thoughts. Everyone wants to stand there, and even if we've lost, clap because we've had a good go, like we did in the Premier League. Everyone wants that. And yesterday, that probably was what equated to the clapping, because we did have a go and we did be the better side for most of the game. I have to say, I didn't think much to Norwich. I said it in the preview. I didn't think they were anywhere near as good as people made them out to be when we were at their place. And I certainly didn't think that they were much cop yesterday. But, ultimately, I keep coming back to it. Since people thought Rob had said goodbye to the club, that is 10 games and 10 points. And whatever your ambitions are, whatever your expectations are in the Championship, surely they're more than a point a game. And people are worried we're going to get relegated, Jimbo. Let's move this on. You mentioned a minute ago what Rob said in the press conference. Let's hear what he said with regards to his future, because I think it was you that asked him about that, about his very future. And here's what he had to say.
Difficult to hear that at the end. Do you expect that you might be speaking with Gary Co about the reaction, or have you had this conversation already?
I haven't yet. No, we'll see. I will speak to Gary. We'll be in the office in a little bit. So for a long, long time, we've been great for each other, for the football club, and we've obviously achieved some amazing successes here. This is difficult right now, but all the conversations that I've had with Gary and the board are about turning this around, supporting us in January and turning this around. They won't want the stadium like that at the end of the game, but we all understand why, because we lost. I don't consider my future. I'm in a position where I'm not stepping away from this. I'm not walking away at all. It makes me want to work really hard and turn this around. I've got as well as I wanted to do well for this football club. I've got a family to provide for. I want to work. I want to work hard as well to achieve something. So we're in a difficult patch. We are, but let's work through it.
So there we go. Rob's not quitting. I have to say, I wouldn't expect him to. Someone gave him a 4-year deal. Why is he going to quit and walk away from that? I wouldn't have expected him to quit.
I have to say we're also, and this is again, it's only things that I see, read and hear. We're in this situation where, you know, if one small thing goes okay, there's another thing to moan about. And I'm not saying they're unjustified. I'm just saying there's a whole wide ranging list of things that people are unhappy about. And so he'll say things like, "Well, I'm not quitting. Well, I've got a family to support and stuff," which is, you know, for me legitimate. That's everything me and you would say if our employment was under threat, because we've got to look after our families. Now, I take it that footballers and football managers are probably slightly more well paid than we are, but still, that is the case. He's not Pep or anything. He's not.
You're living by your means, aren't you?
Yeah, he's not. So I'm okay with that. But then people were saying, "But what happened to not being a divisive figure?" Now, I understand that people will always look back and say, "Well, you said this then," because they're also saying it about Rob and the board saying we're going to go for promotion at the beginning of the season. And I've already said in a couple of podcasts ago that when things change, you have to readjust your expectations on that point, on promotion. Promotion's not happening. We're obviously looking at the other end of the table and getting worried. Change your expectation levels on that. You can hope for things, and when they don't work out, you've got to readjust. It's kind of the same for me there, where he said that, and then when we had that 2-week international break, we all thought he'd gone, and then he came back, and in his first press conference, I was in there, and he alluded to some struggles. We can only surmise mental health struggles of that. So whatever he said then, I'm not holding him to there, and I'm okay with him saying he's not leaving and wants to turn it around. That's somebody who isn't a quitter and wants to win. Whether you like that or not, that is the situation there. So we've got this sense that nothing can change, but everybody wants change, and we're sort of stuck in this limbo of, it can change for some things, but it can't change for other things, and that's a situation that I'm not sure that can resolve itself unless we sort of just let these little things not slide, but change your expectations as you go to what's in front of you.
And that's fine. But then the other messages are coming out that we're playing the long-term game. Well, as I've said a few times, there's so much mixed messaging. I've said a few times on different podcasts, there is so much mixed messaging. One man's beating the team in front of him, the next man's playing the long game. Again, I respect the decision that they're backing their man. But we're on a tightrope here. And we're either going to fall off the tightrope and it's going to go tits up spectacularly, or he's going to get to the end. But very few get to the end of the tightrope without a wobble or three along the way, and we haven't got room for any more wobbles. Board won't like the gambling analogy of this, but they're ultimately playing a game of poker, and in a game of poker, if you don't play a hand at some point, the chips will just disappear with the antes, and you end up out the game. Something has to change. I'm still fine. I've made my point clear on where I am with Rob, but I'm fine if he's their man. But something has to change. Now, if it's not him, something on the pitch has got to change. Okay, it might be an influx of players. There's never been that in January. So recent history would suggest if we're going down that route, that's a risky route to go down, because if you don't get who you want in January, that's not changed. But something has to, because we are sleepwalking, as I've said a few times on this podcast, we're sleepwalking towards a relegation battle that no one seems to want to accept that we're in from within. The fan base certainly have done. People are very, very worried that they're going to be watching League One football next season. Very, very worried, and it's hard to go against that. Do I think Luton will be relegated? No, I don't. But my word, right now we are one of 6 teams who can be relegated.
We're in one of the worst forms in the division as well. And
did I see a table over the weekend of the whole of 2024, and 3 teams have picked up fewer points than Luton in the 92?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah,
you saw that. I saw that too. That's
and we're still not changing.
That is worrying as well, because I think everybody else around there, a lot of teams up higher than us as well, have changed for having a bad run of results, because it's a results business, as we keep being told every week. So yeah, that was disheartening. It's probably the biggest word I'd use for that.
It is a big word,
but also
in more ways than one.
As well,
It is, yeah.
For me, yeah. And it's not. It's just soul destroying seeing that, but unfortunately, it's not entirely surprising either. Surprising that there's probably 3 teams below us, because when you look at the results we had in 2024, it was woeful. Yes, all right, we were in the Premier League for half of that, but we were also at the start of the season, and I hate when managers do this, and Rob did it. He said, we want to win the league next year. So he's already put himself and the players under so much pressure, because the fans are now expecting, well, manager says we're going to win the league, let's go and do it.
But this is what I'm saying. You're allowed to say that. You're allowed you're allowed to have expectations. But when the expectations are clearly not going to be met, then you have to readjust.
Yeah.
But people are still holding it to that.
But should that person then not
his cards out and said that, though, because like I say, you're putting on so much pressure on yourself and the rest of the team. Now, if you could deal with that pressure and deliver on it, fine. Say you're going to win the Premier League next year as well, Rob. but
at the time,
you've got to be able to back
at the time, that's a legitimate expectation. We all had it.
But once it's no longer a legitimate expectation, should he come out and say, look, we're not where we want to be, here's where we are now, and here's what we're doing? Look, the first half of the season has clearly not gone anywhere near to plan. Our plan now is to have a good January, consolidate ourselves in this league table, and then build in the summer with a hope of pushing closer to promotion next season. Everyone will probably be okay. Let's get behind the boys and make sure that they finish in mid-table. But that hasn't come out, and it's not going to come out. But why isn't it going to come out? There's no harm in saying that. Look, we're nowhere near where we thought we would be. Injuries have been one thing. A couple of games that have gone the wrong way that we deserved something more out of, and all of this, that, and the other. And in the Championship, 2 games that you don't get what you deserve has a big impact on the table, as I've been saying all season. Why not come out and say that and sort out that expectation? Why have people got to put it through their own heads? Just come out and say it. It's not. There's no harm in being wrong or not getting to what you said you're going to do. But it does a lot more damage by saying silent. Silence is golden, or it's criminal.
I don't think it's a case of staying silent. To my knowledge, I don't think he's been asked, are you in a relegation battle yet? He might have done a couple of months ago when it wasn't the situation that we're in now. But like you say, if the weekend comes and some teams pick up points, Luton could well be in the relegation zone, and so then it becomes a legitimate question. So I wouldn't go saying that it's silence about it. It's just
no. What I'm saying is it's silence that they've not dampened down the expectations from the last time we heard about the expectations. Just say, look, we're not in that position now. Our expectations for the rest of the season, with half a season to go, are to consolidate ourselves in the league and push on with a good transfer window in August.
Yeah, I think that could help.
So say it.
Yeah, I think it could help. Now, it has kind of, but this is
kind of's not getting it though, is it? Say it.
This is what I'm saying, because it's the point that you raised earlier. So if you read the programme, which admittedly not a lot of people buy, there's a piece on the Lutonian.com if you want to read about it, where I've surmised.
First plug of 2025.
Which I've surmised what David Wilkinson is saying. I'm fine with all the long-term stuff, and that's been there for a long time. It's part of Power Court, it's part of the academy and what they're trying to do with that. Some people don't necessarily want to hear it. They want to.
No, I think people are okay with the long-term stuff.
Yeah, but the long-term is fine. In that piece, he said that obviously the transfer window didn't go as they hoped. It was difficult. And they are a team in transition. So while it has been said there, it's on probably the lowest viewed medium possible. So you could do it on other things. I mean, happily have anyone on here, obviously. I'd happily speak to anyone for the writing side, but it needs to be said a bit more widely, I think. And is that what you're saying? It just needs to be communicated wider.
Some clubs don't even produce a program now. So to think that you're communicating with your fan base through your program is very 1980s.
Mm.
And I know the boardroom notes go on the website, but again, they're not on. They weren't on there at the time that I left to record this podcast, so they don't go up immediately. Why would they? They still want to sell the programs. I get that, but ultimately, they've got LTFC Plus. They managed to put an interview up before the game on New Year's Day with Rob. So there's one medium that you can say it. They've got a YouTube channel. There's a second one. I mean, plenty of thousands of people are watching you and I on a YouTube channel right now. But our communication seems to be in the prehistoric PR days rather than the 2025 PR days. And that's the problem. Few people watch television these days. They sure as hell don't read a book.
I think you've hit on something there, and I wouldn't say it's necessarily a Luton-centric issue, although you're raising it because of that. I think there is a wider lack of understanding of how people get their information now these days, because I don't blame anyone, because it changed so quickly, and it's changed really quickly. COVID's helped this speed it up. It is rapid because there's so many things that are going or gone, like cinema's in trouble, that sort of stuff. Not that you get your information from cinema anymore in the 1930s and Pathé films or anything, but I'm just using an example. And everybody is taking a long time to catch up of how people get their information. Now, before, people would say they have social media. It doesn't matter what social media say, but that is where most of the support and fan base and discussion and feeling is generated outside of match days. It's on there.
Well, it needs to be on a digital platform that people use.
Yeah,
I mean, even the club website. I know it's new. Websites aren't the way that people get they get it through apps and things like that. I know the club have just released an app and things like that, but it's not on there.
No, and I know people, whatever the club does post on the website or the app or whatever does make its way into social media, and then you get all sorts of comments that way.
But you don't need it to make its way, do you? You need to put it there.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. I wouldn't mind them saying something, even if it's just, look, we're backing him and this is the plan.
And I don't think this is the case for one reason, for 1 minute, because I'm a little bit more clued up in how it all works through the role that I have with the trust and things. But if you don't physically put it in these places, people will come to the assumption that of those that have got it in for you, that you've got something to hide by not putting it in those places. And you're just you're biting off your nose to spite your face.
You also can't win, because there are people that would say that. If
people are saying that anyway.
People now are very polarised, not just Luton fans, not just football fans in the world, very polarised. They're very entrenched in what they believe, and it's very hard to change their mind. And so there are going to be people out there that wherever you put it, whatever you say, are not going to believe you, and they're going to even invent things that aren't there.
But at least it's out there.
Yeah.
Damned either way.
Possibly so, but ultimately, long term, no one has any problems, right? The long term plan is good. The long term plan is sustainable for this club. But the long term could also end up being in League One. And no one wants to be there. Not straight out of the Premier League. I think I'm right in saying only Sunderland have gone straight through. That will be embarrassing.
Yeah. And nobody wants that eventuality, but we can't deny at the moment that it's a possibility it could happen if something isn't done. I mean,
it's yeah, exactly. It's a possibility if you don't recognise that the possibility's there.
Yeah, I mean, I keep saying to people around me, let's just see what the window brings, but it's crucial that they get it right.
And as early as possible as well.
Do your business quick. That's what Nathan was all about. And I'm not saying for a minute I want him back, because I don't. But
there are some
under him. We most of the time the the business was done early in the window so we could just concentrate on the rest of the season.
There are some big matches in January. The earlier we can get these transfers done, and let's forget the Forest game.
Yeah.
So we've only got one game now until January the 16th, I think it is. Might even be 18th. 18th. We've only got one league game. So you've got 16 days as we sit here right now to try and get as many transfers in for that Preston home game. And then after Preston, you've got Oxford. And then I think you've got Plymouth at home. So they're 3 massive games. And then you go to Sheffield Wednesday.
Yeah.
So that, there are 4 games there that are winnable. And then I think we get towards the area where we go to Sunderland. There's one game and then we go to Sunderland, isn't there?
Yeah.
And from Sunderland onwards, I've referenced this 13-game easy run that we're on, that we're smack bang in the middle of, that we've taken 7 points from 7 games on. We've got 6 left. After those 6, this fixture list gets seriously, seriously tough. Sheffield United at home, Sunderland away. I think they're the other way round, actually. But
it's the other way round, and then Watford.
Then the derby, which, is going to be a pivotal game of football to how the season's reflected on. Leeds have still got to come here. Middlesbrough have still got to come here. We've got to go to Burnley. This month is massive. So the earlier we can get transfers in, and it's good that we've got Christ Makosso in. It's unfortunate that all the vibes that we're hearing is that he's not going to be ready straight away. Let's hope he's a Ted Mengi, and that if he's called upon, he is ready straight away. But either way, we need some more personnel in this squad. Transition team, yet 7 of the starting lineup yesterday were here at the start of the Premier League season. So we haven't transitioned very far in 18 months, have we? So we need, and 4 of the 5 substitutes who came on were also. So again, there's a mixture of messages. Let's go on to the game. Anyway, we've covered the off-pitch stuff enough. I don't really want to go through the game itself. Luton hit the post, Luton hit the crossbar. Norwich goalkeeper made a couple of saves, and relatively tame shot managed to get through a whole heap of bodies and into the bottom corner from Nunes. Science wasn't a factor in the game at all. In fact, the only time I noticed he was on the pitch was when he did that air shot in the second half, and thankfully he did.
Is that the one that went out for throwing?
Yeah, should just say at 1-0, Tom Holmes made a brilliant last-ditch tackle to stop it from being 2-0. Then it would have turned massively because we'd have been out of the game then, but it wasn't. But Zach Nelson, we said a couple of podcasts ago, Jimbo, throw them in. Don't want all of them thrown in at the same time, but throw them in. He played in midfield as opposed to the other 2 times that he's come on at right wing back, and he looked the part. But I have to, the one thing I'll reference before we come on to Zach, and it involves Zach, how goddamn embarrassing was it that no one knew who was going to take a corner after Clark went off? That looked amateurish.
Oh, yeah, I know. I did just about see that, but I was looking at, I think I was looking at a replay of something on the TV screen in front of me, but
that just looked amateurish.
But then is it also a case of people picking up these little things and making things bigger of them? I've seen a lot of people saying this, and I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just trying to give you the other possibility that everything's not.
Well, he didn't go straight over, did he? So I'm assuming he didn't know he was on corners.
Listen, he took the corners. He took some very
took some good ones. Yeah,
he played very well. He looks very good. For me, I thought Marvellous Nakamba had a very good game when he came on. Yeah. Obviously came on early for Clark, who's ill and tweaked his quad a bit, or strained his quad a bit. So I don't know if we'll see him, but you never know. Marvellous Nakamba had a very good game, and when he does, he gives a bit more solidity in the centre, which is what happened. And then it allows midfielders in front of him, one of them which was Nelson, to have a bit more licence to play a bit. And he did. And he played some nice stuff. He got involved. He was involved in the penalty incident, which I've seen on replay. And for me, the contact starts outside.
Yeah, it does.
Outside the box.
It's right in front of me, right below me. It's outside the box. I didn't even get up and cheer. And you know me. If I think there's something to shout about, I'll be shouting. But there wasn't.
Yeah.
He got it right. To be fair, the ref wasn't that bad.
No.
He needs to add some time wasting numbers up a little bit better, because 4 minutes of injury time in the second half was an absolute joke, because the injury incident that started the flurry of substitutions went on for 3 minutes when the team talk in the second half happened. So we only got 4 minutes, but to be fair, I'm not convinced we'd have scored in 4 days, let alone 4 minutes.
Well, they'd be tired, presumably.
But yeah, no, Nelson very good. I think, yeah, it's at the stage now where, like you say, it can't particularly get any worse, and people react well to him. And Phillips the other day, and Joe Johnson, even Joe Johnson got himself sent off. And while you can say it was naive and he probably shouldn't have gone in for that challenge where it was, there's not been a big furore of it because people understand he's 18 years old, and that is, that sort of stuff can happen when you're young. You're still learning, but people respond well to him, and he played well in the previous game particularly. Zach Nelson played well in this one, and his little cameo, Josh Phillips, wonderful cross. So if the academy is the future, which is part of the long-term planning and has been laid out clear in black and white in that programme piece, which again probably needs to be shared far and wide because it is quite interesting, then maybe now is the time. Because if the pros, the senior pros, aren't doing the job you need them to do, maybe that's another thing you can change, isn't it? Maybe.
Can't remember him having a bad game, Nelson.
So far, so good. He's been one of a few things we can shout about this season, definitely, and Johnson as well. He's the games he's played, apart from getting himself sent off, which you have to accept. Like again, what James said, you've got to accept that's likely to happen because he's still learning. They're both still learning, and they've been chucked in because we haven't really got any other options.
No, but they are ready. They're ready because they're England international. So.
They're ready. Maybe not to play regularly, like week in, week out, just yet. But I think they're sort of preparing them for that. I think the long term aim is that they'll be regulars next season.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say I'd be disappointed if we don't see Nelson on Monday on the back of what we saw on Wednesday. Do I think we will? Well, tune into the next podcast to find out. But spoiler alert, no, I don't.
He's also scored at QPR.
Scored at QPR as well, yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the reasons why he come out of the team. No shooting from outside the penalty box, please. As Carlton Morris showed when he took a touch for no reason yesterday rather than putting his foot through that ball in the second half. Just hit it, Carlton. Just hit it. See, so worse can happen.
Those things.
That's a confidence thing.
Those things are confidence things. And it's happening across the board. It's understandable that they've got no confidence because they can't win a game. And even when they are winning games, they sort of manage to lose them at Coventry. There's all these different scenarios and nothing goes right. So that's a confidence thing. But again, if you're getting the same result because you put the same input in, get the same output out, then that's the thing, isn't it? You can change that.
Absolutely. Yep. Let's quickly finish this podcast then with, well, we're in the month of January now. Dan, what would you like Luton to do in the January transfer window? Realistically. Not bring 15 players in and get 15 players out. No, realistically.
They're two different questions, I think. No, I'd like to see if we are going to strengthen at centre half, get somebody in who can improve what we've already got. I'd like to see somebody challenge Alfie. I know we've got Joe Johnson in there, but as I said earlier, not quite sure he's ready for, if we're going to continue playing with wing backs, I'm not quite sure he's ready to play regular just yet. I'd like to see one in midfield as well. Just one in midfield to really...
In addition to Lamine.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming he's more of a defensive player.
I think he's box-to-box, number 8, yeah.
Is he? Okay. Well, maybe that's answered that one then. Maybe a bit more back. I mean, I'd like to see them make their mind up what they're doing with Woodrow and Taylor and Brown, because I think those three getting 5 minutes the other day wasn't really, that's not something you want to see when your team's 1-0 down chasing the game at home. You want to be playing, don't you? And especially somebody like Joe Taylor, who I still think could do something in the future for us. Whether he's going to stay long enough to find out, I don't think he will. But and whether Brown and Woodrow are happy enough to play a bit part. I know Corley said he is, but nobody's going to be happy with the amount of game time he's had or lack of game time. So maybe do we try and move one of them on and get another one in? But then strikers are hard to come by anyway. And I think if you're going to get someone to improve the first team, you've got to be looking down the lower levels that is scoring a lot of goals and is ready to do that. So if you're going to do that, then that's what you need to look at. But I think a couple more. So a left wing back, centre back, possibly another midfielder. Yeah. So,
what you eyeing up, Jimbo?
First point of call, a combative central midfielder that can get around and kick people in the air. I wanted to play football essentially, but somebody that's going to put a...
So you want Kevin Nichols to come out of retirement?
Yes, please. Yes, good. Thank you. Make that happen. That'd be
first
lovely.
spell Kevin Nichols though.
Yeah.
First spell Kevin
first
Nichols.
spell.
Not in the knee.
Second spell gets into this team.
So yeah, a central midfielder. So we've got options because you can't keep flogging Jordan Clark. And listen, Jordan Clark has been improved in the last month or so, and I think that needs saying because people were not happy with him.
I think we referenced it, didn't we, in the last home game? It flashed up on Sky, so we referenced that since the Middlesbrough game. He's been much improved.
Yeah.
No problem with that. Again, he's very much in the Heath Chong situation of very good going forward, but you notice him moving more in defensive areas where you don't want him.
Absolutely. So I think a midfielder because I don't think Shandon Baptiste is going to be back for an awful long time.
Sounds bad, doesn't it, that one? Yeah, it does sound bad.
So someone to come in...
Got engaged over Christmas, I believe.
Shandon Baptiste.
Is that what done it?
No, he was already injured.
Did he get down on one knee and do his knee?
And could get up again, yeah. Yeah.
Down on the one knee.
I hope Mrs. Baptiste to be didn't make him do that.
No, I believe it's a calf, isn't it? But I don't see him coming back. And he was brought in to be sort of a playmaker.
The Lokonga.
Essentially to be that. He's not going to replace Lokonga. We all know that. But there is a very good player in Shandon Baptiste. He's just never been able to stay fit. And that's obviously part of the problem that you mentioned earlier. So a midfielder to come in there. Obviously, Liam Walsh will come back and he's promised to try his hardest or whatever it was in that statement and stuff. But I would imagine, given the amount of time that he's been injured and not played through suspension, that if there was a way that they might look to move him on somewhere, they might take that. You asked me about ins, didn't you? But I want to get some outs first. I think if any offers come in, you'd listen to them for, Heath Chong, and maybe even Thomas Kaminski. That's not because he's not a good judge.
Yeah, no, maybe
one of the best keepers, but
no, maybe for me,
massive saleable asset.
Yep.
And you look to build on again there. I think. I've said Chong, haven't I?
Yeah.
We're assuming Taylor's as good as gone as well, aren't we?
That was the other one I was looking for. Yeah,
so.
Taylor. Yeah, we've been saying this since the summer that he's not in Luton's plans. He was on his way out. Had a foot out the door, and other parts of the domino trail didn't work, and he couldn't go. So he's not favoured. That's why you've not been seeing him a lot. He's going to be going, I would imagine. So then you've got some space there to free up a striker. Yes, a must. I think people are getting quite excited on social media about the possibility of Kone from Wickham. I've not heard anything either way, but very good signing. Could be.
Just to dampen the enthusiasm on that, Swansea fans were getting quite excited about him as well on Sunday as I was coming out of that ground. Although they might be losing their manager to West Brom, so that might change that.
Yeah.
There's lots of ifs and buts playing on that, isn't there? Again, that's going to be another thing as well. You got your managerial clubs will start changing managers, not us, and of course that affects your plans for January windows for everybody else. So that might play into our hands.
Well, it's another probably contributory factor, even if it's not high up on the list of the board. And we don't know. I'm just guessing and theorising that you're not going to change Edwards now because you've got presumably plans for the transfer window. And if you get rid of your manager, you've got to go through a recruitment process.
Yeah.
That's half your window gone at least.
Again.
And it's not what you want. So there's another reason for you probably. But yeah, a striker, a midfielder, probably need a defender. In the same way that Mads has been particularly injury prone and stuff, if any offers come in for him or a loan move, maybe he would go as well because he seems to have fallen down the pecking order. Tom Holmes is ahead of him. and he's been very good. Tom Holmes, just been very unfortunate for Mads because he came here with a good reputation and a captain of Barnsley, and he's just got injured constantly. It's rough for him, but I would imagine that might be a situation, and then you try and get another centre back if it's not Christ Makoso, sorry. Tom Lockyer is obviously not going to play. I would imagine not this season.
I don't think so.
But he's deregistered anyway. Ted and Mengi, I don't think he's going to play this season, so you would probably deregister him and get a spot in. So there's loads of movement that could happen, but it's whether it will. And it's not as easy as just saying they need to get deals done and they need to do it right. They need to get it right because there's so many moving parts in the transfer window. And obviously, people know how much money Luton have got now. The way that they can possibly get transfers and signings is probably, I assume, completely different from their entire tenure of 2020 up until the Premier League money.
Well, it should be, shouldn't it? Yeah. But based on the summer, and again, this is what fans are telling me, based on the summer, they seem to think that the transfer window was approached very much in keeping with how it was pre-Premier League. And hence why, I made the point, you sign injury-prone players, which was the market that we looked at pre-Premier League, and it was a successful market in terms of getting us there. I think people are hopeful and in their minds right to expect that they look in a different market. And to be fair, Mark McGuinness came out of a different market, and lo and behold, when you don't look at the injury prone market, you get a geezer who doesn't get injured. And I think that's what people will want to go down. I don't think you'll find a Luton fan that wants 10 players or expects 10. Everyone wants 10 players. I don't think you'll find a Luton player that expects 10 players to come in January, but I do think you will struggle to find a Luton fan that I speak to at least that doesn't want to see 4 or 5 come in positions where we need it, and preferably not via the injury-prone market.
Well, exactly that. And this is what you and I both heard, that 4 or 5 was what they were looking at as a target, but we haven't got the clarification of whether that includes Lamine at the moment. But even so, that'd be 4 more, and Lamine, that's 5. So he is technically a new signing, even though you got him in summer. We haven't seen him yet, but he's ready to go. He's been training, so hopefully he's one that can come in straight away and do the business until they can get more bodies in the building. But I think they have to go. What has happened in the last couple of months probably means they have to go all out to try and get whatever they can in terms of targets, and fans are saying, well, they need to shell out money, and you can understand that, can't you?
I think they're going to have to start spending, because how long can you how long can you carry on with the way they've been doing it? And I'm not having a go at the board for the way they've done things, because it's worked up until now. But sometimes, and I know everybody knows how much money we made out of getting to the Premier League, and we didn't spend a lot of it last year, but there's a lot that's been spent that we don't know about, because we're not privy to the accounts and the ins and outs and on running a Premier League come Championship football club, or the ins and outs, what they are financially. So we don't know exactly how much there is to spend, but there's got to be 10, 15 somewhere, isn't there, that they can put on a couple of new players and to help now and get us through this mess between now and the end of the season, and look into the future as well. There's no use going out getting players that have contracts are running down in 6 months' time, getting them on loan and then signing them free when they've been out for 2 years or whatever, because that it's just not working, because we've got enough of them already here. So we need people that are going to be fit, stay fit, and improve what we've got, which is what we always used to do in the first place. But you're going to be hard pushed now to find somebody that's of that ilk, the higher up the ladder you go, to improve what you've got.
Yeah, you are, absolutely.
Not being injury prone, you've got to. It's really difficult.
You're in a market now whereby you have to buy for the now, and buying for the now generally means you go overseas. Our last 2 signings, Lamine and Christ, both overseas. Yep. If you go back to January, the only signing that came in was overseas, Hashi. And that's a market that I'm pretty sure we'll look into more throughout this transfer window. The other market to look into just so happens to be that under-21 league in the Premier League. Get a couple of them. Don't, Don't have to spend big bucks on them. No one's saying spend 4 million on a loan fee or anything like that. But there'll be people, presumably Rob's still got good kudos with the coaches that are in the Premier League that enjoyed what he did last season, that would send him players. Pep in particular. That De Bruyne fella, he ain't played many games recently, has he? We'll have him on loan for a bit.
He's injury prone, so he fits the bill.
I'd more than happily take an injury prone Kevin De Bruyne. Don't you worry about it. But you know what I mean.
Yeah.
There's loads of youngsters now that aren't getting a game. Teams are out of the FA Cup. Teams are out of the Carabao Cup, or they will be out of the FA Cup by next Saturday. Some teams, because Arsenal play Man United, for example, in the third round.
Yeah.
But would a factor there in a Premier League side deciding to send their youngster somewhere, would they want to send them to a team that is in a relegation battle? That's a factor.
But why wouldn't you? Because every game's going to mean something. Surely you'd want to send them somewhere where you're going to be playing in games that mean something, rather than sending them to Bristol City, who win, lose or draw are going to finish 12th this season because they finish 12th every other season.
No, I'm just raising it as a point. There's a possibility because, the perception of Premier League.
I think it's the other way round. Would Luton want young players in a relegation battle? But they don't think they're in one yet, do they? So,
well, it's about getting, like, if you're going to do that, it's obviously to give that player experience, isn't it? That's why we use the Premier League loan markets, to give those players experience. And what better experience than being chucked in the deep end? I mean, Pep Guardiola up until now hasn't ever experienced anything other than success and winning everything all the time, and now he's struggling. He don't know how to cope with it. So maybe he could have done with a spell at Luton when he was playing.
Slightly different scenario.
Do with one,
isn't it?
I know it is.
He's been at clubs who've got the most amount of money and generational talents.
Yeah, of course.
It's no surprise to me that when he hasn't got those players available to him, that he's actually quite an ordinary manager.
Well, no, exactly.
But even if the position in the tables, we've got a good relationship seemingly with Villa. There must be someone who can't get in that Villa team. Who we can have back. And I'm not thinking who you're thinking, but I'd love it. Yeah. But there must, they've got youngsters. Chelsea have got more youngsters than you can shake a stick at. They're not
on a school.
They're not going to care where on earth in the Football League pyramid they are. They just need them to get some football, don't they? So there are Premier League loans out there. Hey, look, if Liverpool are sending people like Doak out to Middlesbrough and things like that, you'd like to think that we can get one or two as well. I mean, look at Derby the other week. They had God knows how many Premier League loans. At the start of the season, Derby would have been relegation candidates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, you can understand why Plymouth have got some Premier League loans because of who their manager was, but Derby haven't got that on their side.
No.
Yeah. Well, we've had Issa Kabore, Cody Dramé, Premier League loans. Well, Nakamba was a Premier League loan at the time.
Go back to the last time we were fighting relegation in this league. Cameron Carter-Vickers, the most important loan signing this club's ever had.
I saw him in some transfer news today on the internet.
Seeing him in that Old Firm derby, not sure he's progressed in the 4 years or 5 years or whatever it was since we had him. Not good, they weren't. Very bad.
Oh well.
Yeah. So the boys looking not massive amounts of business in January. I don't think anyone will do massive amounts of business, but the business that we do needs to be impactful in the team right now. And, whilst Christ is a welcome signing, this squad needs a bit of repair in here and now. And, maybe a little bit of money spent on it. Not too much necessarily, but enough to keep us in the Championship, ultimately. That's the aim from here on in, isn't it? That's it for this episode of the podcast. Nobody went. Luton 0, Norwich 1, which was quite surprising, actually, when you consider the run of form that we've been on. So nothing's really changed at the top of the leaderboard. So we will update that after the QPR game, where I'm sure there'll be plenty of people that don't have Luton winning that game. Maybe these two alongside me, we'll find out in the next podcast. Thanks very much to everyone who's watched or listened to the podcast, however it is that you consumed it. We really do appreciate it. And your support has been really, really good, particularly over this Christmas period. We know we've got podcasts out in a different time and everything else, but we're pretty much back to normal from here on in. So thanks for all of your support. Thanks to the Barber Club and the Lower Level in Luton for hosting our studio, to Sean Grant and the Wolfgang for our intro music, and to Ed Smith Creative for all the designs that you see on set. From Jimbo, Dan and myself, come on you Hatters, it can only get better.
For me, it's the people and the spirit of the people as well.
I love this town. I love this town. I love this town. You know what I love about this town is actually you. Everyone in it has got this massive soul.
We're Luton people.